blur out a
I
bit
see.
there.
It's different.
It took more time than I thought.
Well, good evening and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Evangelist Tia here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Love Bay family, we're continuing to rise out of the ashes together. On tonight, we have part 2 of the topic we started last week, which is youth awareness and support. We have with us our co-host, Jennifer Peterkin, our guest again on this evening, Mark Doria. And we will also have Officer Leo Doyle, the Letty Outreach Coordinator. He will be with us shortly as well. He is on his way in. The listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guests or co-hosts, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. You can also text us at 437-778-3299. If you have any resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, any local organizations or your faith community, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. And before everyone introduces themselves on tonight, Love Bay, I wanted to share some information with you. One of my colleagues, Minister Patricia Jones, she has a prison ministry, which is she uses that to aid women who were formerly incarcerated, re-enter society. And she is doing a concert. She is called Philly Praise Fest. It is going to be on Saturday, June 29th at 6:30 p.m. at Poirier Way New Testament Church of God. The address, if you can make it, is 935 South 53rd Street. This is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1943, in the United States. If you would like more information, you can reach Minister Patricia Jones at 267-904-3528, or you can email her at pcjtraveladvisory@gmail.com. There are several guests that are going to be there. It's going to be a night of praise and worship, but I wanted to mention that Marvia Providence will be there, and Marvia is from Canada. So I just wanted to share that information with you, Love Bay. Minister Jones will be a guest on our program in a couple weeks or so, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks. So she'll come and she'll tell us about her prison ministry. But I wanted to share this information to be of a support to her. So again, if you're interested, if you would like to go, if you want more information, you can reach out to Minister Jones. And with that, Jen, I would ask if you would greet our listeners on tonight.
Sure. Good evening or good morning, wherever you are. As Tia said, my name is Jennifer Peterkin. I am one of the co-hosts on Suffering in Silence. I am a survivor of domestic violence and have been working alongside Tia for a few years now, which is crazy. Time has flown. In advocacy work for victims of domestic violence. I started my own podcast a year or so ago called The Human Experience, where I interview people around the world in person for their stories and about how what they have experienced in their lives has shaped who they have become. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can visit my website, thehxpod.com.
Thank you so much. And Mark, if you would greet our listeners on, you're a pro now. You're just
Well, good evening, everyone. Good day, to take Jennifer's cue. You're correct. So good day, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight and dealing with these all important topics. I'm honored to be back again as a guest. As Minister Tia is saying, I'm becoming quite an old hand at this, and gladfully so. The issues that are being tackled are relevant and they're important. And they need all the attention that they can get. So hopefully we're here. Don't be shy with texting or emailing or calling in. That's what we're here to do. And tonight we're focusing on youth awareness and support. And hopefully, we'll settle for helping one, but we want to help everyone. Yes. So with that, let me kick it back over.
Thank you. So I want to start as usual with sharing some resources, but thank you, Mark, so much for what you just said. We would love to help one and appreciate if we do help one, but if we can reach more, that is awesome. Thank you so much. So we want to start with sharing the National Helpline for Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services. Their number is 800-662-4357. This is in the United States. The National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline, their website is loveisrespect.org. Their phone number is 866-331-9474. The Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, which you have access to 24 hours a day. Their website is 988lifeline.org. Or you can call or text the number 988. You can also go to the website if you want, and you can actually chat online if you would like to reach someone that way. Outside of the United States, you can visit the website findahelpline.com. We also have the Polaris Project, which is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Their number is 888-373-7888, or you can text the words "Be Free" to the number 233-733. Their website is polarisproject.org. Also, Pennsylvania Coalition to Advance Respect. Their website is pcar.org. And the last we have RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. Their website is rainn.org. And we want to emphasize again, no matter where you are, you can reach out for help in your country. You just do a Google search and find the numbers and the websites that are related to your area. So if we're sharing information that's Canada, you still can search for Europe. If we're sharing information for Australia, you still can search if you're in Russia or wherever you are in the world. If you have a computer in front of you, do a search and look for the information. Before we go any further, we want to give Officer Doyle a moment to introduce himself. And, well, not introduce himself, he's been here before, but just to greet our listeners and viewers on tonight.
Hey, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. Literally, I'm in active duty patrol corporal for Ridley Township Police Department, and we're just dealing with a domestic violence issue. My shift would have normally ended 6:30, but we were standing by to kind of help, and thanks for allowing me to be a couple minutes late. I also work for MVP Recovery. I help with the Law Enforcement Treatment Initiative, where police officers like myself on the street can get people into treatment. Whether it's punitive, whether it's in lieu of punitive causes, or just to help someone that's in need of addiction services. And I'm also a mental health therapist at Miramont Treatment Center, where I specialize in treating first responders and military that are struggling with addiction and or mental health, sometimes or both, or just sometimes just mental health. And that program is called the Viper Program at Miramont. But again, thanks so much for having me here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to talk for a couple minutes, give you a moment to to catch your breath. But the first question is coming to you, just so you know you can. But as we begin, I wanted to re-emphasize to young adults and even to adults who find themselves struggling with or dealing with issues or trauma from their childhood. I want to re-emphasize what we said on last week. The bottom line is to get help. So as we said last week, it may be scary and hard, but keeping silent, it does make your fears a lot worse because you're keeping it inside. And very likely, and we're talking about young people, very, very likely you don't know what to do already. So keeping it in it's kind of like torturing yourself. You don't know where to go, you don't know what to do, and you're dealing with whatever the issue or trauma is. So think about the options we shared on last week. We talked about seeking out help. If you are in immediate danger, definitely go to the police. Call the police, get to a police officer. If you are able to, and if you trust One of them, speak to a school teacher, and speak to the school nurse, the school counselor. There should be a school social worker, even the principal or vice principal. If you have, a good relationship with them, you can speak to a friend or parents of your friends. But think of the options that you have, even the information that we've shared on tonight, hotline numbers or websites where you can go and visit. But do something. If you're not feeling right, if something is happening, do something. And that begins with a conversation. That doesn't mean that you're going to be in court the next day. It doesn't mean that officers will be at your home that night. But the first step is to talk. And you really do. You really do need to open up and you need to talk. So, Officer Doyle, the way we started last week was each of us really just asking a question. What would you say to yourself at that age, at that young age? Because some of us were the young people, the young people that we're trying to encourage. We were in their spots. So we're not making anything up. We're not pulling stuff out of a textbook. We're not creating scenarios, but I can tell you from a child that was abused, my perspective and my thought and my feeling. So I would ask you that same question now. Just what would you say to yourself as a young person if you needed help or direction to deal with some issues or trauma, where to go or what to do?
That's a great question. Yeah, yeah, it's a really kind of deep, interesting question. I think it's so important, right? Like as a therapist, like isolation, right, is like a really, really, terrible part. Some people struggle with depression or, when you're not sure where to turn, you start isolating and, just getting lost in your thoughts. And I think you really highlighted like talking about it. It's important to find people in your life that are, trustworthy and being able to forge relationships. Programs like this. I mean, you announced the whole first part of the show when I got on. Was different avenues and ways to go, and I think Google is a huge resource.
Mhm.
You can Google any type of support group at this point. But definitely having that ability to seek out trustworthy people in the community, whether it's a pastor or it's a teacher, especially a teacher. I teach Dare, and we just had a class on bullying this week. It's funny that we're talking about this, and we talked about depression, and Dare is for fifth graders, and so in each of the three classes I teach or taught this week, each class went with, what could be the effects of bullying and depression. And each class went to the suicide, that suicide could happen. And in Dare, it's when the children introduce a topic, if they want to talk about drugs or this, we're allowed to kind of go into it a little bit further. And in this case, there was 62 fifth graders that have all heard about suicide, have all, talked about it. And, we really dove deep, and talked about, what happens, with depression and, safe places to go. And we talked about the guidance counselors in your schools, the teachers in your schools, friends, family members that you trust. And it's just important to have that network, really being an advocate for yourself. And I had each one of them talk about what I think is the most important thing for everyone, and it's to be able to look in the mirror and love yourself. Too skinny, too much weight, too tall, short, whatever it might be. This is your one shot at life, and learning to love yourself is like so just paramount.
Thank you so much. I want to say before we move any further, to the adults to those individuals who we are now directing children and youth to come your way, the teachers, social workers, whomever it is, could be clergy. If you find yourself in a position where a young person is coming to you who needs help, please don't turn them away. Please don't ignore them. And please, for God's sakes, please don't say it's not my job. That I of things that irritate me, that's a sentence that just oh my goodness, I can't stand that. Do not say it's not my job. If you're a teacher, yes, it's your job. If a student comes to you and they need help, if it's beyond English and math and science, if they're saying to you, I am being bullied, I'm being picked on, or I'm being hurt at home, or I don't know what to do, it is. Your response should be one of compassion and understanding. And it really is okay if you don't have the answers. If you don't have all the answers and you don't know what to do, that is absolutely fine. But the same information that we're sharing for young people, the same websites, the same phone numbers that we're telling them to go to get help, these are the same websites, the same phone numbers that you can go to get answers to questions, to be able to share with them. Google is your friend as well. So again, you don't have to have all the answers. But once that door is open, it takes so much, even from the standpoint of an adult, to get to a point to where you say, I need help, and you reach out for help. Imagine what it's like for a younger person. And you may be that one shot, Officer Boyd.
Just to add to that, coaches, or whatever, right? When you hear someone say, hey, how you doing? And not so good. And you have that, like, as the person hearing that, receiving that, and you have that feeling in your gut, like, I really need to, delve into that, or I really need to, you have to do it. Like, if you feel that in your gut, and there's like that spidey sense is tingling in you, like, hey, that might have been a reach out for help, and it was maybe it was subtle. You got to at least dive into it, and that it's not easy, but once you start doing that and being the person that, kind of doesn't let a weird comment slide, and always like, hey, are you okay? Like, I'm here for you. It starts to become second nature. It doesn't happen overnight, but if you are someone in teacher, coach, pastor, police officer, parent, friend, and you start having that inside of you, you have to act on it. You can't stand by. That might save someone's life.
Absolutely. I want to reemphasize again, I believe Shelley made this statement on last week when she was with us, and she simply said, I believe you. I want to reiterate that also as well on tonight. I believe you. We believe you. There are some horrific things that happen. There are some things that the average person may feel like that story is far-fetched. You just pulled that out of thin air. You can't let that stop you from getting help. I understand how hurtful that is. I really do. And I understand how that is as a young person to be in that position as well. But don't let that stop you from getting help. So we want to emphasize, we believe you. I remember I think I was 15. I was about 15. I lived with one of my grandmothers, my father's mother. I lived with her for a couple of years, and she would do the weirdest things. The phone in the house, I did not know the phone number because she didn't want me to use the phone. It was just crazy things like that. I would go to school, I would come home, and I could see somebody went through my things, like just to do it, like going through my drawers and my clothes. But for me to say that to another person, like, why would your grandmother do that? I don't know, but she did it. She did things like that. She would tell me not to go to school. By that time, I had my first daughter, She was about a year old, I think, and the high school that I went to actually had a daycare, so I could take her to school with me. I was going to school. I was on track. I was like, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go to college. At that time, I had Temple in my mind. My heart was settled going to Temple University. She would tell me, don't go to school. She would say, stay home. The church that I went to, I couldn't integrate and communicate and participate with the young people there the way that I wanted to, because she would just control everything. Like, people would come and see me, friends would come and see me. She would tell them I wasn't home. I would be right in her house. Just weird things like that. And when I understood what was happening, and when I started reaching out, and people would say, well, that's your grandmother. Why would she do that? And I would say, I don't know, but this is happening. I am not crazy. And I think people really started to see it and understand it when she started doing things to them. Like when things happened in front of their eyes, and they were like, oh, I remember Tia said, well, you know, it's like the gaslighting and the crazy making for me, that didn't start when I got married. That started in childhood. And it was difficult to speak of. And it was very, very anguishing when I said, this is what's happening. And my word was challenged because I was a kid. I was a teenager. And it's like an adult always had the right, like they were just always in the right, no matter what. So I want to encourage you. And I'm telling you, I know what it feels like. And there are some things that can just be so twisted and so off, and you just can't make any sense of it. But you open up. And I kept telling everybody until somebody actually believed me. I kept saying it, and I kept going through it. And eventually I was just out of the situation. Mark, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many places to go. I mean, when Officer Doyle was talking about, someone, when you're speaking to someone and they kind of give you that in, and that, we were talking last week about situational awareness, and I think it's incumbent on us to just really have our radar going, at all times. When someone says it, because what's the pat answer? How you doing? The pat answer is fine, right? And so when anyone gives you a response other than fine, we need to be paying attention. So okay, if you're not fine, then what's going on? Do we need to go get a cup of coffee? What's going on here? And take it from there. I'm not sure if I conveyed this last week. I know we covered a lot of stuff, but a young lady that I was helping walk through some stuff, I was encouraging her to go to, and I'm not beating up Catholics, please don't take it that way, but she was a Catholic, and I was encouraging her to go to her church and speak to, she didn't want to go too far with me. And I said, well, you can speak to a priest, and they will not divulge or talk to it about anybody else, and you can get some counseling. We were on that conversation for months, and she finally relented, and she went to a church, and she did get hold of the priest. The priest said to her, well, it's 5 o'clock, and you're going to have to come back another day, maybe make an appointment, because I got to get out of here. And she just shook her head and walked away, and that was the end of it. Never talked to me about anything again. So he not only shut down her, but he shut down my avenue with her as well. And and that's after months of trying to get her to go. So I mean, we have to have that respect. You're so on point, Tia. Is I don't care what appointment you've got. When someone is reaching out, you got to put the brakes on. And the most you get to do is say, let me make a phone call, and I'm going to be late, not going to be home for dinner, whatever. That's all we get out of that. Cancel it, because you've got an opportunity right here that may never come again and may shut down someone's life. So it's serious stuff. And anyway, I don't think I conveyed that particular story last week. That's why I took the time to do it this week. And I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. What was your question again?
I just asked you to jump in with anything. So, but this is so. I think it's easy for us because we are the adults sitting here, but we were once the children that we're trying to reach out to. And I really, really want to emphasize that to young people, to any young person who may come across this, who is watching this and listening to this. We are not saying things just to say it. I know what that fear is like, thinking what's going to happen to me in the rest of my life if I speak about this issue. There are things I was dealing with in high school, and I was like, let me just put my head down, and I'll just, just get through it. Let me just bear down, focus on school. I got to get out of the 12th grade and get to college. I thought if I tell anybody anything, I'm gonna be sitting in the courtroom with police, and it's going to derail my college career, and I just can't. I had all of this in my mind. It was like I was adding to the scenario and making things up. Like I was scaring myself more on top of things that were happening. But there wasn't a person that I had that I could go to. And I just thought my life was going to be over if I say anything. Forget about whatever justice being enacted. I really felt like this is going to mess up my college career and things like that. And it wasn't like that. It wasn't going to be like that. So you need to be able to open up, to speak to someone who can objectively bring another point of view to the situation, which is first of all making sure that you are immediately okay, and then helping you step by step. What do you need right now? Do you need to talk to a counselor? Do we need to bring the police in here? What do we need to do? But you got to take that pressure off of yourself, which is reaching out to get help. And Mark kind of touched on it a little bit last week, but Officer Doyle, I would ask you about getting younger men to open up, because it's hard to get boys and men to talk about issues. So I would ask, in your own way, if you could speak to just the young boys that may be going through any kind of issues, and either maybe not be afraid to open up, but maybe just don't want to, because sometimes boys just don't want to.
Yeah, it's funny. Young boys, police officers, first responders, military. People that are just all closed off is my gig. Um, uh, you know, um, so it's like so funny. They're not funny, but it's just always like the theme, right? It's like it always just comes back to like self worth. Just like instilling that. Like the literally the victim of domestic violence that I just dealt with was a middle-aged female, and just spoke how it's gone on and on and on, and just like when you listen to a victim of domestic violence, and just the how small their world is, and the things that they believe are appropriate and okay, and when you can step back, and I sometimes use this like imagery. I'm like, if we were watching your life as a TV show, what would you be telling the female character in the TV show that's being abused? Like, what would you say? Like, and they're always like, get out, run and call the police. And I'm like, but you can't do that for yourself. And it comes back to like self-love. And so with like, first responders, and I guess, I do teach young boys with their, fifth graders, obviously still kids in fifth grade. It really is just building that, like, coming from my perspective, it's, giving positive affirmations, like, hey, that was a great job reading out loud. That's not easy, because maybe they're not receiving that at home. And the advice I'd give is really just seeking out positive people. Like, if that's the advice I'm giving to a young person, it's, go towards the positivity, safe, positive places, sports, activities, People in your community that you want to emulate or be like, advocate. And typically those people are people that are open. And I really like what Mark said. It seems like we're right in line. It's like, and then it takes a village, right? On the other side, it has to be someone that's open to someone, someone that's coming up to them and wants help, or is looking to someone to talk with and speak with. It's not always easy, but T, talking about the youth is just, we're seeing the violence. 14-year-olds with firearms and pistols. We just got it off this week in my, in the very areas that we work. It's not 35-year-olds that doing it. It's 14-year-old children. So it is so important to be having discussions like this. Like, how do we have those open talks? How do we get through to the youth? And I think it starts with things like that. Programs that get in, like Dare, that get people in the community to talk to them, talk to kids.
And so on last week, we talked about how adults don't fully understand and can't always communicate and explain and express what it is that they're going through and how they're feeling. And so absolutely, it's the same for youth. And so we could have a young person, a young man, a young woman who's being hurt, who's being abused, who's being violated in some kind of way. And then you'll see them with a gun in their hand. Instead of being able to say, this is what's happening to me in school, this is what's happening to me at home, they take their anger, they take what is I'm sure is shame at that time, and they turn it into a violent behavior towards another individual. And so we've really emphasized getting help for yourself. So you are in a place where you can explain how you feel. You can explain and deal with the emotions that you're going through, because you don't want to turn into the person or persons who hurt you. That is a real thing that happens. When you see maybe parents are really hard on the older child, and the older child takes it out on a younger sibling. That really happens, and it happens with violence. It could be inside the home, it could be in school. If you experience anything that makes you feel less of a person in home, and then you find a kid, you go to school, that's where a lot of bullies come from. But a lot of them can't express, I just did this to him, I did this to her because somebody did it to me. It's really I think there is an onus on the adults all around. Like you said, it takes a village. I think even if a young person is not coming to you, we all in our areas, wherever you are, need to be vigilant, need to be watchful, and need to be paying attention. Because to an adult, there should be some behaviors that you see and it is just off. It's wrong. So maybe you need to go ask a question. No child should be off in a corner by themselves every day, all the time, and you never ask a question. You never ask, are you okay? Is everything all right? The answer can't be we get kids to school and give them an IEP and send them off to another classroom, and you just, they're just separated. It can't be that. So I think as adults, and you don't have to be a police officer, you don't have to be a teacher. I think you just have to care. And I would say for myself, I'm more sensitive to it because I know what my life is like as a kid. I really do. It was hard. It was tough to navigate and then turn around and see, not only am I trying to get through this, but I'm also being blamed for it. And that was another thing we wanted to emphasize to our youth, which we started on last week. It is not your fault. It's not. You cannot take the blame and the onus for what someone is doing to you that hurts you. And we talked about it last week. Abusers are smart. Perpetrators are smart. Manipulators are smart. They know how to pick whichever person or whichever young person it is that they want to spew their venom on. Jen, I would ask, you for your thoughts on that. So expand on that. But I think that's a difficult place to get a young person to see and to understand it really is not your fault, whatever it is that's happening. And that does something to your psyche when you're not only being hurt, but you feel like you did something to cause it and deserve it.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I just keep thinking about the fact that all of these issues that we're talking about are not, they exist at every age. They exist with everyone. But the stakes are so much higher with children because the power dynamics are different, right? Or youth. The power dynamics are so different. There is, I mean, power dynamics in abusive relationships are already off. But when you're talking about youth who have like a societal and cultural lessening of power, that makes it so much more important to stay diligent. These are all lessons that we have to learn. And I kind of go back to what we were talking about last week with boundaries and how, we don't know what we don't know. And like we inherit behaviors. And if we grew up with an unhealthy behavior, we're more likely to perpetuate it because we don't realize it's an unhealthy behavior. And I guess I actually have a question. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is there seems to be a narrative around, I think generationally there's always division, right? Like between age groups. So there seems to be a narrative, and maybe it's like particularly in social media, where you talk about like kids these days, and I think this has happened in every generation, but I notice, kids these days are so entitled, kids these days are so this, that, and the other, and it's never something positive. And so there seems to be this like generational division between adults and youth. And obviously there are people that exist that are looking to help children, but I'm wondering what that is like for youth who experience this constant barrage of negativity in terms of their elders are there's like a condescension about it, if that makes sense. And I wonder what part that plays in then youth being able to feel like they can talk about what they're going through and what they're dealing with, what issues they're dealing with. Does that make sense?
It does. And I mean, I can give my answer, and I'll Mark and Officer Doyle, let you address it from your point of view, but I can give you my answer from my experience. It caused me to completely shut down. By nature, I think I'm the quiet person. I'm not like, I don't say anything unless I need to say it. If you call me to speak, to preach, give a speech or whatever, if you ask me my opinion, I'll give it to you. Ask me a question, I'll answer it. I was never the person to just, I'm not the life of the party. That's just not me. So for that to naturally be me, quiet, and then to have elders belittling me, being emotionally and verbally abusive, it caused me to go even deeper into myself, into a shell where I didn't talk to anybody. I mean, there are very few people that I would have even conversations with. Like if I was talking to you, I was talking to you for a reason. Like there's a point to this conversation. There's something that I need. And when I have what I need, that's it. I talk to my teachers for a reason. I need to get out of high school. How many credits do I need? I need this class. That's it. I wasn't trying to have, personal conversations. I did not trust anybody. I didn't trust adults because the adults in my life, family, were the ones who were hurting me. Mm-hmm. So for me, it caused me to shut down. And that didn't just happen and just permeate through my childhood. I carried that into my adulthood. And I didn't even know it. I didn't know it until I realized something isn't right. And for me, all of that started to come together, dealing with my childhood and dealing with my ex-husband and being in an abusive marriage. It was like everything started to come out, and I had to figure out how to deal with it all. But for instance, even dealing with my ex-husband and the abusive marriage, I realized what I was thinking and what I was feeling, it didn't start then. Even when I realized things with him, it's a problem. So there were things that I was feeling that came from my childhood that I brought into um, my marriage, that I brought into my adult life. So again, for me, my answer, it caused me to shut down and it caused me to not trust anybody.
Yeah.
And if you gave me a reason, like if I even a little bit, if something didn't look right, I completely shut you off, shut down, and that was it.
I feel like erosion of trust is a good way to put that. And it honestly, it reminds me of kind of what you were saying, Mark, with the story that you told about the woman or the young girl, the courage that it took or the time it took for her to finally get to that place and then to be dismissed. And I was thinking about what we were talking about last week with different modalities of therapy as well. Like if something doesn't work or if somebody brushes you off, it's very easy to be like, why would I put myself through this? Like I'm already hurting. Why would I continue to make my pain worse by seeking out people that really don't care and really don't want to help me? And even though that's not the entire truth, I feel like it very quickly becomes their truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jennifer, I love when you said the word condescension, because that really kind of encapsulates a lot of the adult youth conversation in a nutshell, right? Congratulations, we've graduated. We've got more birthdays than anybody else. So that gives us what right? I'm sorry, I missed that point. It doesn't give us any right. Just because you got years behind you on a calendar doesn't make you smart. I know some pretty old people who are pretty stupid on a lot of issues. So, and conversely, I know a lot of young people who are incredibly wise. And this is something, what was the, right, RESPECT, right? I mean, and this isn't just a youth adult conversation. It's a conversation amongst gender, amongst race, amongst everybody. This is what we're all looking for, and when you get into that dynamic, and it's so easy to slip into, adults think that, I've made it and I can speak down to you because you don't have my life experience or the life experience of anyone else here in this room. Well, who's to say your life experience counts for crap? I mean, it does not. So what's true is that whatever the feelings of that youth are their feelings, and that has to be validated. So now, what can we do to help them to come further along to an understanding of what it is that's troubling them, and understanding that society has changed also. We are also more isolated, which is the irony of ironies, in a technological age where literally the world is at our fingertips, and yet we are more isolated than we have ever been. And don't believe me, go to a restaurant and look around at the people eating dinner. You have families who 4 or 5 people all sitting there texting. What's so important? Your parents, your siblings could be dead tomorrow. What is it that you can't communicate with them over the dinner table over? This is for millennia. Breaking bread together is what friends and people do, right? This is how we communicate. This is how we share our experiences. This is how we convey our life experiences to one another. And if you're not doing that, please don't tell me you're doing this with your friends on the internet. I know you're not. And by the way, I'm out of my depth when it comes to social media. I've been, I read a lot about this kind of stuff, and one of the recurring things that comes up is alienation on social media. And I got to tell you, this is something that goes right over my head because I'm self-alienated on social media, right? I care. but to the youth today, This is incredibly important. It ranks amongst like the top 5 things that are driving angst in their lives. And it's kind of like, okay, why are you subjecting yourself to that? Is the best advice I can give? That's not good enough. It's not good enough because they're doing it and they're going to continue to do it. Why? All their friends are on it. That's how they communicate. So, and I totally, that's the one thing I'm going to tell you straight up. I can't go there with it because I just don't even know all these things that are out there. Facebook, right? That's the last thing I know about, and that's 20 years old. So I mean, you got all these other things, Snapchats and TikToks and all these things. I don't even know what the heck's going on with any of that.
So, I think Mark, that's a very good point. Social media. And so, Officer Doyle, I would ask you, and especially since you're working with the DARE program now, in my mind, because I'm an adult, and even having been a child, being bullied and being verbally and emotionally abused at home. Today, I can say I don't need to be on a computer. Like I can turn it off. It's really easy to say that. How do we get that? How do we translate that to young people for them to understand you do have some power? You do. You don't have to be on social media. If someone makes a comment, you don't have to respond to it. You don't even have to read it. You don't have to be a part of that program. You can turn the computer off, walk away from it. You can delete the app. Or how do we get our young people to understand that there is a power that you do have, but you have to exercise it.
Yeah, so very very difficult question to answer. Because of the way society is, and Mark, obviously was being funny, but they're true. Facebook's the last thing he knows 20 years ago. And there's so much. Um, and one of the things that I try to do is meet people where they're at. Like meet the kids where they're at. Where and so one thing I don't think I mentioned is I do internet crimes against children. So like I've meet people on the internet and done those investigations and really kind of gotten to like the darkness of how many applications and different social media things there are. And Mark named, I think the only one he didn't name was like Twitter out of an Instagram, maybe of like the 5 like major ones. But there are social media sites where kids are, painting and they can comment on what they're painting. And I'll hear kids are getting bullied on these painting apps. You can apparently on Venmo you can comment on things like it's just everywhere. So it's a pretty loaded question, and it's just ever changing. It's like ever growing. How many social media things there are out there, and just the way the world is going. And I think it's just important to have strong adult figures in your life to demonstrate how out of whack this has gotten, how far it's gotten, and kind of just demonstrating that there's other ways, and how isolating this can become, and how what isolation can lead to. And I think it's like about doing baby steps, like how I would how I talk about self-love. It's a big part of me, and how I try to have my people that I treat give some positive self-affirmations a day. Maybe just trying to put the phone down for an hour, or during dinner we're not allowed to have a phone, like things like that that parents could instill to try to break away from this.
Yes. Speaking of parents, I think also from a parent to parents, I believe you really need to make your presence known in your children's lives and in their school life. Like your child's teacher should know who you are. I remember one of my girls. I don't know. I think she was in maybe the 3rd or 4th grade, and she came home from school one day. She was in tears and she was talking about being bullied. Some other little girls were picking on her. So I said, okay, don't worry about it. I talked to her. I said, I'm going to handle this. This is going to be handled. I sent a letter to the teacher, an email. I was very specific. Like, I need the names of parents. We need to have a meeting with the principal. This is not going to happen. I referenced other children who were bullied and who killed themselves. And I said, no one is going to come and tell me that my 9 or 10-year-old killed himself or herself because of being bullied. I was extensive and I was adamant and I was purposely I don't want to say over the top, but I was meaningful in my words. And I expected a response, in which I did immediately. I got a response from the teacher, and the situation was handled. I also wanted to begin a paper trail, so to say, because if this issue happened again, not only with my child but another child with these children involved, and you see this is a problem and it needs to be solved. And I was adamant, one of the issues or one resolution that's not going to be, my child does not want to be put in a different school. I'm not going to have her life upended because you are not properly dealing with bullies. That's not going to happen. So I would say to parents, you make your presence known. Do what you need to do, because her teacher knew if I have to leave work, I'll be there, whatever time during the day, to meet with you and a principal, and we can talk, and these other parents. And it's not being mean. I think I was forceful, but this is my child. I have my child with you for a certain number of hours a day. I'm at work or I'm at home. I need them to be able to be in school and not be in fear. That's a horrible feeling. To be somewhere where you don't know if you're going to be hurt or not, or picked on, and you don't know whoever is around you to be there to protect you or listen to you. In my mind, I'm like, we are going to alleviate this issue right now. So again, I say to parents, make your presence known and let your child know you will listen to them, you will hear them. My kids knew they could come to me and tell me anything. I will hear you, and we're going to figure this out. There's going to be a change. I made it a point for them to see me defending them or speaking up for them. I think youth absolutely need that reassurance. And I know that's something that I did not have. I didn't have someone to speak up on my behalf, to speak for me, to say, this isn't right. This needs to stop. I think that is absolutely essential, to open that space for them and let them know, I'm here for you. And no, I'm not going to just watch this kid just push you down in the hallway and just say, oh, stop playing and keep going. So
yeah. No, I was just, and what you just said is beautiful. It's your life experience made you a better parent. Okay, but here's the joke. I don't mean it as a joke. It's the sad irony is that so many people don't have that parent in the first place, who is their advocate, who's always going to have their back, who's going to stand up for them, who is going to be there for them. A lot of these kids are on flying solo. They have no one, and that's where all that fear comes in of trusting and talking to people. Adults are a threat. Why am I going to trust an adult? They're and to some there's some level of truth in that, right? I mean, if you've been abused, if you've been ignored, and being ignored is a form of abuse too, condescended to, I mean, all of these things. Why bother? So you fall in with your peer group, and we know peer groups aren't always the right answer. We go on gangs and all kinds of things of what happens in there. So I mean, or you go into complete, total, utter isolation, and reject everything. And this is where all kinds of other stuff occurs. So what we're talking about is so huge. I mean, you don't need just a 2-week session. We need a show on this every week for the rest of our lives would be about right. But what is amazing to me is the insightfulness of youth. And to Jennifer's point about condescension, they can do it to us, right? Because it's almost like we grow up and we've made our decisions and we've chosen our paths and we've determined what's right and what works, and so therefore we discount anything else. So, but no, when you're on the front end of that, we're on the back end of it. When we're on the front end of it, and they're the ones being abused, and they're the ones being all the rest of it, they have some incredible insights, and they have very valid feelings about what it is that they're going through. That you're not going to sweet talk them or hard talk them out of it. This is legitimate. This is real. This is what I'm going through. My future is at stake here. I forget college. I may not get out of high school. Why? Because I don't have a place to sleep. I don't have food to eat. I've got a missing dad and a mom who's drinking all the time, doesn't have a job, or is on drugs. These are this is real life, and Peter Pan stuff just doesn't work. Now, I'm like you. I'm fortunate enough to have been able to turn that, and I'm just as adamant. I totally get that's what you're saying to you is resonating so loudly, because nobody's stepping on my kid. Nobody. And believe me, they know that I'm there, and that's exactly what I wanted, because that's also what I didn't have. So,
right.
But that's okay, because there's success in that, in those bad things. There's success that comes out of those, but that's the exception of the rule. So how do you reach all those people? And it's what we talked about last week. It's what Officer Doyle was talking about tonight. I think it's so important to remember. We've got to surround ourselves with the right people, and that may mean cutting off friends and family that are detrimental to us. If we can look, first of all, believe you have that future. Believe there is a future. I grew up in an area where people didn't think that they were going to be 20. They were going to ever make 21. People used to laugh about that, and a lot of us didn't. And so a lot of us did. And one of the things we did was we surrounded each other. I had a lot of people my own age, within a couple of years, either way. We took care of each other. We looked out for one another. And that was incredible. I conveyed the story about my friend who went home and talked to his parents last week, and so there's, we watched each other's backs, and any one of us flying solo and living single wouldn't have made it. So it is so important to take that step, open up, recognize. You can recognize the people. You can recognize the people who are going to be successful, who are going to make it. You can. Don't invest in the people who are going to drag you down, because you can recognize them because they're already drowning, and they're just going to bring you down with them. And I'm not trying to be, pessimistic here. I'm talking about survival. Sometimes that's the first place to start. It has to be survival. Before you can help anyone else, you have to survive, right? It's the plane crash. Get that oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on anyone else. Because if you're dead, you can't help anybody. So some things are easy.
So, on last week, we mentioned briefly, it's hard for adults, but youth need to do it as well. You can't stay in denial. And so the conversation that we're having tonight, the conversation that we had last week, we full well understand for these issues to be on the shoulders of young people, this is hard. We're talking about boundaries. We're talking about separating yourself. We're talking about reality. We're talking about your gut feeling. We know kids are still just trying to figure themselves out. So we know that this stuff is foreign. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to be hurt. And some of the things that we're saying that may be solutions, it may sound off to you, but you don't have to go through this by yourself. There are resources out there to help you figure out and go through, to help you identify what is my support system? What should my boundaries look like? What kind of people should I have in my life? Or even if there's some, bad influences around, you can get some ideas on how do I distance myself without making problems worse. So reach out to these areas, these resources that we're talking to you about. We know it's hard. We know it's difficult. We know it looks crazy, sound crazy, but it's doable. And that's what we want you to know and understand on tonight. It's doable. And I'm going to ask for us each to give our final words to the young people on tonight. But I think that I want to emphasize, and I said it last week, one moment, an incident, trauma does not define you. You can go on and live your life. You can be who you want to be, do what you want to do, even if you don't know what that is right now. You have time to figure that out. Your life is not over because of what someone has done or what someone has taken from you. That's not you. That does not define who you are. You still have a life, and it's hard to live it and it's hard to move forward. But take advantage of these resources that we've shared and even resources that you may find on your own. We've said it takes a village, it takes support. You can't do it by yourself. So start right there with getting help and using these resources. Jen?
Yeah, just compassion, I guess. Youth, especially. We just never know where somebody's at and what they're living through at the moment. And so I would hope that we know enough to extend compassion to everyone. But I think possibly, especially where young people are concerned, having an awareness and an understanding that things may not be what they appear on the surface. And to just tread lightly, tread with care, tread with purpose, and be the kind of person that you would have needed at that age.
Officer Doyle?
Just that you're worthy. You're worthy of having a good life, and that things get better, which they truly do. You know, things will get better. You know, the more you apply yourself, the more you try, the more you take little steps. You know, maybe it's attending a support group or an activity or some sort of sport, but you're worthy. You're worthy of having a good life, and your situation, if it's bad now, doesn't have to stay bad. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Mark, if you would give us our last words on the evening.
Yeah, the statistical probabilities are that none of us would ever be here. And yet there's over 8 billion of us here right now on this planet. So we've gotten past the hard part. We beat the odds. And so from here it's easy, right? Well, not maybe that easy, but it is easy from the standpoint of some of the things we're talking about here. Keep the perspective, understand your worth, your value. We're not here by accident. We're here by design. And that means each of us has a purpose. It's up to us to find out, determine what that purpose is. And I'll give you a shorthand. I think the purpose for all of us, at least, and I think for all of us, is to help one another. And how we define that is up to us. We're not defeated. We're victorious.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Jen, I know you'll be back. Love Babe, we will have Officer Doyle back with us, and we will have Mark back with us shortly in the future. Thank you all so much for the time that you took to have this conversation on tonight. Left Bay, if you want to catch up on previous episodes of our program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence TV. We thank you so much for joining Suffering in Silence with Evangelist Tia here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Love Bay, we want you to remember that we're rising out of the ashes together. Good evening. Thank you so much for